Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Stephen Kelly. I'm Chief Executive of Manufacturing Northern Ireland. You're very welcome along this afternoon. This is the fourth and last of the current series of our STEP Talks, which is Smart Technology Empowering People. And I'm very pleased that today we have Ross Kane, who's the Director of Manufacturing, Engineering and Technology at Collins Aerospace, based down in Kilkeel. As I said, this is the fourth one of our STEP webinars this season. It's following on from three very successful sessions over the last couple of months. And today, Ross is going to talk to us about the digitalization in manufacturing and the journey that Collins Aerospace have been under over the last number of years, and what hopefully is planned for what's coming next. As many of you will know, Northern Ireland dominates the global market in terms of seating for aircraft, and Collins Aerospace are one of our primary producers and support not only lots of jobs in Kilkeel, but lots of jobs in the supply chain too. So their success for our aerospace sector is highly important for our entire manufacturing sector. I'm going to hand over to Ross now, who'll take us through the journey that Collins Aerospace have been on, and then we'll have an opportunity for some questions and answers. If you do see on the panel, there is a questions function. If you type your question in there, I'll do my best to get around to getting as many questions answered as we possibly can. And we'll make sure, if we can't answer them, that we'll find a route to ensure that we can get those answered for you as we go forward. A couple of quick things just to say is we're going to begin with a very short survey. So if we can have the survey up on the screen, we'll give you about 10-15 seconds in which to ask that question. It'll be followed up by 2 questions at the end as well. So from your perspective, in respect to your digital transformational journey, where would you rate your business right now? You haven't started, have made the decision to adopt, but really haven't progressed too far. Commenced implementation and have seen some initial results. Adoption decision has been made and it was correct, and you're now expanding the deployment of that journey, of the digital transformation journey. And you have multiple uses of digital technology and they're already delivering benefits for you. So I'll give you 5 more seconds just to complete that poll. Thanks very much, and we'll continue on now with the rest of our session this afternoon. As those that may have been on some of the previous ones, these are quick, short, sharp introductions. They're followed up with the Q&A, as I mentioned, and potentially with some follow-up directly with the business themselves or colleagues in Invest NI who can provide you with the support. So I'll hand over to Ross Kane now, and Ross will take us through a very short presentation, and then we'll kick off with the question and answers.
Thank you, Stephen. If you go the first one then, Jordan. So we've obviously had quite a long journey on digitizing our manufacturing sites around the world. I'm going to focus for today on one piece of that, which is quite exciting, mixed reality or XR, and how we're starting to look at that as one piece of the digitization puzzle. If you can take me to the next one. So we'll start with just explaining what I mean by mixed reality. There's 2 main threads to it, augmented reality and virtual reality. Virtual reality at the bottom, most people are familiar with. You can see a couple of headset examples there. And that's where you replace the user's view with a computer screen, essentially. They see everything they see is virtual and generated. Augmented reality on the top is where we overlay that computer data, whether it's a work instruction, 3D CAD, some prompts over the user's field of view. So to them appears to be overlaid in front of the product. I've got a few component examples at the top there. The most ready example of this are computer games like Pokemon Go, which some of you may have seen, where it's overlaid with reality. And this particular one, we've been focusing on augmented reality as an aid for our operations teams, which we feel we get a lot of benefit from. Can you take me to the next one, please, Jordan? So some of the drivers for this, which I think will resonate with a lot of you, it certainly can be seen as a potential force multiplier, as we've called it, for medium or high cost labor areas. So what I mean by that is using this technology, you can add capability to the operators or the teams making the product. There's obviously efficiency and the quality improvements, but it also gives that extra string, which makes it much easier to compete with potential low cost countries, and makes it more effective for organizations based here. We've seen and targeted improved efficiency of around 20 to 30% in areas where we've been able to deploy this successfully. And I'll give a couple of examples shortly. And we've also seen huge quality improvements. And you can imagine overlaying check processes or examples for the work for the operator can really improve the quality and repeatability of what they do. We also see it helping with ramping, which will become particularly important in the aerospace industry over the next few years. It helps those operators learn faster, helps us present the right information to them at the right time, which allows them to ramp up to the required speed much faster. And then the last one, which we haven't really tapped into yet, but could be a huge benefit, is training people. The ability to share what the operator is seeing with another person, the ability to let the operator see instructions from that person when they're not there, makes them almost present. And can really support training as something we're going to look to in the future. The next one for me, please, Jordan. So a couple of examples of applications. The top one there is an assembly application. You can see the product there with the 3D CAD overlaid on top of it. And that's an image of what the user would actually see on the top right. So in this case, we're linking the 3D models to our engineering data. So it's coming straight from our CAD package. It's connected to the manufacturing execution system, so it knows what work that operator is supposed to be doing, and only presents the information they require at that time. This has resulted in 25% cycle time reduction and 90% defect reduction. And in effect, what that does is replace what traditionally would have been paper drawings or paper work instructions that an ME group would have prepared, and gives live data for the operator to use and build the product. The second example is in manufacturing. And again, it's a similar idea, overlay instructions of parts and tools. This is a stock example from another supplier, but the intention of that vision is it's an iPad, and they're being told with visuals on the screen what to do, what to install next, what to check next. And again, linked to the rest of the digitization packages for shop floor instructions or MES. And in manufacturing, we've seen, if anything, greater cycle time reductions, but also still a significant defect reduction. And you can see how that really does bring the traditional shop floor of bills of materials and drawings into the 21st century. Next one for me, please, Jordan. So obviously there's a lot of challenges with this, and I'm sure some of the questions we get will be around this, but it's really a new skill set for, I've said manufacturing engineers here, but it's really anybody involved in deploying this stuff to the shop floor. It's not the traditional machining or even CNC machines. It's quite a new technology. A lot of software and network skills required, and that's going to be a challenge for us to get the right people we need with the right skill set. It's also significant cultural and ergonomic challenges for the operations team. So in some cases, the people won't be used to using computers. Thankfully, most people are used to the iPads and touchscreens these days, but it's still quite a significant shift for them. And in the case of systems that wear headsets, it's additional physical weight on that operator, and we need to help them and get them used to that change in their work process. The hardware available for this is pretty mature. The examples I gave in the first slide are all commercially available. It's not particularly expensive, but the ecosystem to run it is still in its infancy. And by that I mean how it connects to other pieces of software, how it's going to connect to the CAD packages or the ERP systems in your facilities. That's where the challenge now is, and we see huge potential with the technology. The next challenge is going to be how we deploy it and how we scale it. And the last point I'll make is just that this is pretty new, so the teams you deploy will need a safe place to fail. They're going to need to be able to try this, iterate it fast, away from the shop floors, somewhere where they can understand what will and what won't work. This is all quite new, so they need to be able to try it in a place where they feel that they can adapt and innovate without a sense of fear. So that's the end of what I had. It's just a sort of taster of the stuff we've been working on. I'll open it back to you, Stephen, now for any questions from anybody.
Ross, thanks very much for that. It's extraordinary that any of us that are parents watching online, the kind of technology that we've witnessed our children engaging with and growing up with is actually having real life, real world applications in a manufacturing workspace. And maybe we're all a bit quick to kind of criticize our children about getting off that Xbox or PlayStation or whatever the case may be, and what we really should be doing is encouraging them to do more, because clearly these real life applications of these types of technology are having an enormous benefit for your company to begin with, and maybe we'll explore some of that. Maybe kick off the Q&A myself. I mean, it's clear from your presentation that kind of mixed reality development and deployment within the company has been a success. I mean, I think it would be remiss not to go over some of those kind of numbers again. I mean, you talked there about 90% defect reduction, 50% improvement in quality, 20 to 30% improvement in efficiency. People are learning faster, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, is there one particular area that you kind of look at as a business and go, that in itself has been the main benefit from deploying this type of technology?
Yeah, I think there's been a couple of areas, but the thread is where we have very complicated sections of work to do. So whether that's, for example, wiring a seat, it's complicated. There's a lot of parts. It's hard to see that on a 2D drawing. That's where this stuff really comes to the fore, where an operator can move themselves around the product to get a different angle. They can maybe zoom in and zoom out naturally. So it's where we have either lots of components coming together, or it's a very complicated assembly that operators typically struggle, that we see a real benefit. And it's really, Stephen, about presenting information in a more natural way to that person. What would have maybe taken, you can imagine 5 or 6 A3 pages of a technical drawing can be condensed in something that's right in front of them and they can easily understand and work with.
And questions are beginning to come in from our viewers, and please do ask your question in the chat function there. I mean, one of the things that came out from your presentation was that this was a cultural shift in many respects for your colleagues in Collins Aerospace. It was a different way of working. It was a physically different way of working in some respects as well, and there's a whole new skill set required, perhaps, which may not have been familiar with the people who are there, and those that maybe have those skill set, maybe not looking at a manufacturing environment, thinking that's where they could end up as being deployed. But I mean, if you were kind of looking at those new skills, I mean, where did you find those skills? Did you have to train them yourself? Did you get support in terms of upskilling your colleagues in the workforce? Or, I mean, whenever you started to deploy this, where did you get those skilled people from?
We were pretty fortunate. We had a good cohort coming through our graduate programs who were much more comfortable with this kind of technology, and could see the potential that others couldn't. And we've been able to, a couple of those in particular, upskill those internally. I think though the it's one of those ones you don't know what you don't know. And the Digital Catapult in Belfast helped us with access to equipment, and I would recommend people engage with that group. Just it's one of those places to feel safe. And again, the equipment itself isn't particularly expensive. So it's really understanding what can we use, what can't we use, what will work with our organisation. I think we have a problem, a medium-term problem on getting the right expertise in our manufacturing engineers or quality engineers to understand how to really deploy this stuff properly. And I don't think I have the right answer for that yet. But it's going to be, and I think the new generation that we see coming through, and how we can use them to support the existing workforce and deploy this new technology.
And just on the back of that, there's a question here about if you can expand a bit on the ergonomic and cultural change that was cultural challenges, sorry, that you had to overcome. So you brought in new talent. I mean, the part of the new cohort of people joining the company, but also reaching out to the likes of the Digital Catapult, assisted with that process. But can you expand a little bit on that ergonomic challenge as well as that cultural piece as well?
Yeah, so the ergonomics, if you can imagine operators wearing one of those headsets as they're assembling product or manufacturing product, from an ergonomics perspective, that's difficult. The first generation of headsets is quite heavy. We're asking people to wear them for prolonged periods of time, and that didn't work out the best, if I'm honest, as we started. But over time, the headsets have become lighter. We've understood how we can portion the work so that they're only maybe wearing them for part of the time. And there are some people who just do not feel well with this kind of equipment, that they just don't react with it as a kind of travel sickness. And so we need to be careful in rolling this out in a way that doesn't necessarily require we have to use the equipment all of the time. It needs to be selected where we get the most benefit so that people aren't put under unnecessary strain. I would also say that one solution is using an iPad. And nearly everybody now is comfortable with something like an iPad, and that represents a much less significant cultural change for people in the day-to-day.
And you said something fascinating there towards the end, and it's been picked up actually by one of the people submitting the question. And you talked about creating that safe environment for things to fail. I mean, that's a pretty brave position to take, but it appears from an ergonomic and a cultural change perspective, it was absolutely essential as the business began to alter what it did and who did it and how it went about. Can you talk a little bit about the creating that environment where that safe environment where failure was expected?
Yeah, it's something that Collins globally is pretty good at. We have, as you can imagine, a lot of advanced technology teams. And I think the concept that not every project will work, that we're kind of betting on something that we hope will be successful, is well understood across our corporation. It also applies to the local level, that if we're trying something on an operations production line and it doesn't work, we need to understand that the people trying to deploy it aren't going to be ridiculed by their peers, that the operations team understand that this is a trial of some sort. So I think having pilot lines or pilot areas or areas where the engineering quality groups can test this stuff, not necessarily behind a closed door, but not in front of everybody, that just gives them a bit of confidence to try stuff out. And especially with a technology like this, where we don't necessarily know what's going to work, we don't know the right way of using the equipment, the right information to present, you need to just be able to try that stuff. And I think that's around protecting the teams that you've got developing this stuff, that you protect them from maybe the expectations of the whole facility, so that they can iterate quickly in a safe space.
And how many people within the business, just as a percentage, would be engaged with that AR or that mixed reality process? And the question here is it more AR or VR? But it roughly is a percentage across the business, whether it's directly engaged with the headsets or iPads or the people backing those up. As a proportion of your population, what's that?
It's a very low percentage, Stephen. It's probably 1 or 2%. I mean, the team developing it is very small. It's primarily 1 or 2 people, and we're still in the phase of rolling it out into production. So we have limited pilots happening, but it's not yet in widespread usage. We're on that journey. We're a couple of years into it, and I think the hurdle we've hit is that ecosystem. How do we scale this in a way that connects to all our other systems, that doesn't rely on somebody running around manually updating stuff, manually creating these pieces of software? And again, that challenge will be very different for different people depending on the CAD systems they use in the facility, their ERP systems, how far down that digital journey they are. I don't think this is the kind of thing you want to embark on as your first project. You want to have a bit more of an ecosystem in place first.
And a question here just about difficulty or even perhaps resistance from some of your colleagues to introducing this technology and getting trained up. I mean, was there resistance? Was there reticence? Or perhaps even are people looking now and going, do you know what, I'd love to get involved or be one of those guys or girls that have the headsets and are trusted with that type of role? I mean, what's the reaction been, positive or negative, from staff?
On the whole, it's been pretty positive. There's obviously some people who don't like the idea of it. They're not comfortable with using that equipment, but I think most people, when they've used it once, they think it's pretty cool. And there's always a big smile on somebody's face when they're using it for the first time. And that typically means that people want to get involved, they want to understand what it can do. But fundamentally, if it's done right, and I think a lot of the stuff we've done has been done very well, it means that it works, and people see that it makes their life easier. And again, it's not on the same scale as something like automation or robotics that require hundreds of thousands of pounds investment. And they kind of make or break. This stuff is a much lower barrier to entry for investment, and that means that we can take a few more risks with it.
Now, we'll all be familiar with our computers not properly working or something going wrong with our mobile phone or whatever the case may be. Technology doesn't always work all the time. And there's a question here around what you do. Is there a danger of over-reliance upon it? What happens if there's a malfunction or a technology failure? Is it now part of your risk register or your disaster recovery plan? Did this have to permeate this whole way through the governance and management structure of your business?
Yes, we've chosen not to make it to make it feel safe, that we can roll back to the previous way of doing things almost immediately if it was to fail. And as we're still in a deployment phase, it's on pilot cells with pilot programs, and it's not completely deployed across the factory. But another sort of decision there is that we're using commercial off-the-shelf equipment. You can buy it. You or I could go to the shop now, Stephen, and buy most of the stuff if we wanted to. So it's not a bespoke industrial bit of hardware that needs expensive maintenance and an expensive support network. Now, a double-edged sword. It also means that it's not customized and it's not optimized necessarily for us. But we've made the decision that it's commercial equipment, therefore much more likely to be robust, much easier to update. And then if it does go wrong, we still have the old way of doing things. We still have our traditional MES system and work instructions. But I can see, just like as we transition to a digital shop floor for all our work instructions for our employees a number of years ago, without that, we would now feel a lot of pain. I can imagine in a few years' time, as we've fully deployed this system, without it, we will feel a lot of pain. We'll have lowered the water level of what our expectations are.
There's a question here just about can you create work instructions using a gold sample, i.e. a physical assay, or does it need to be a 3D CAD? I mean, you mentioned there that there's a kind of blend of still traditional ways of doing stuff plus these new ways of doing things. Have you been able to merge those across, or is this all exclusively done on 3D CAD?
The projects we've done are 3D CAD, but I mean, fundamentally, anything you can put on a computer screen, you can put over the field of vision of the user. So, if you wanted to put, a simple work instruction that would otherwise be printed out, a PDF type format, hovering in front of the user, that's perfectly doable. And again, that means that if somebody's, maybe relying on going into cramped spaces, or they're climbing underneath something to do their work, that they wouldn't have to carry that stuff with them. It would be in their field of view. We had focused on CAD because, as I said, we saw a huge benefit from those highly complex operations that were requiring a lot of, understanding of the operator to piece through technical drawings. But you could overlay photographs of a product or a picture of the piece you want to inspect. That's perfectly feasible.
And that kind of leads me on to the kind of effort required to get there. I mean, that sounds very straightforward. I can even imagine in your scenario, just making sure the right material is used on the cover of the seats, so that the operator can reduce risk of, or you can reduce risk of the wrong materials being used. There's a question here about kind of typical standard work instructions and the time that it takes to create those. I mean, if you found that there's, obviously, when people get more used to it, they're going to get better, quicker, more efficient at it. But has it been a big journey for you to try to get basic stuff up and running? What's the typical time involved? Are you seeing that improving now, et cetera, et cetera?
So I think that question is part of the journey that you go on. And I think we've, over the past few years, digitized the shop floor in terms of how you present the engineering data. It's automatically pulled to terminals for operators and things like that. This augmented reality activity is about presenting that in a different way. So if you currently are manually creating work instructions, or you're simply printing out instructions for the operations team to use, then turning it into something like this would require a lot of manual work to digitize all of that. So I think you probably want to have semi-digitized your shop floor before trying to deploy this. But if you know that the same operation is maybe being done every day, it doesn't change, you're confident that investing a few hours and making that manual instruction to upload to the headset is going to still stay there for months and months, then it might be worth it. But our business is fast-paced, hundreds of engineering changes every month, hundreds of new parts every month. So we chose to do something that was just displaying what we already had automated, rather than trying to create new automation.
And kind of moving on to, there's obviously clear benefits already visible for your day-to-day, where you are now. And there's some questions here about kind of future deployment, whether levels of utilization will increase significantly in the future, but also the impact that may have on reducing your development time for new products. You kind of mapped out where you think this is going to go in terms of levels of deployment, but also what it means for the future business.
Yeah, I think in terms of utilization and adoption, that it's likely to be pretty highly adopted across most of our facility. I think it's got clear benefits over the traditional way of presenting information to the operator. In terms of new product development, or before you get to that shop floor, I think for me that's where the virtual reality kicks in. If you don't have a product yet, then virtual reality can support. There's virtual prototyping, there's virtual design for manufacturer tools. Now we're not using any of those at the minute, but there are commercial applications for that you can buy, and again that has the same benefits, that it's sometimes hard for people to do proper design for manufacturing assembly using CAD on a screen. Most engineers are pretty good with spatial awareness and they can picture how all that works. But having that extra benefit of a virtual reality environment, if anybody's used those, you get completely engrossed. You can see things you otherwise wouldn't see. You can perceive the assembly of the product from angles that you hadn't thought of before. So I think it's definitely going to be a big benefit virtual reality and that product development part of things.
So thinking again about the next steps, I mean, are there other technologies that you're implementing or even considering implementing alongside where you've got to so far? And what do you think those kind of next steps on your journey are?
So I think the four manufacturing assessments that a lot of people here will have done around Industry 4.0 and how we deploy that. I think that whole system is important. The smart factory, connected devices, tracking assets around factories, then also automation, industrial robotic automation has got to be the next thing. And again, as I look at just in general how companies in Northern Ireland compete with low-cost countries, we need to be a bit better at how we automate things. I know that the food industry is probably ahead of most of us on that, but that's definitely on the roadmap for where we go next. How do we do that in a way that's scalable and sensible?
And obviously, as things become more connected right the way through your business, then the risk of cybersecurity becomes more pronounced, I suppose. I mean, is there stuff that you've had to do alongside this to protect the business, or is this already part of your culture anyway as an organization?
It's obviously we're part of a big organization, and cybersecurity is very important and presents a long path to getting this kind of equipment on the network. So we're setting up in a similar vein to the Safe Place to Fail, a separate network to try these things and get the approvals before it gets on the main network. But certainly that's unfortunately too far into the IT realm for me. But there's a lot of challenges there, and it's going to be different for every organization and different requirements depending on your industry and what you're doing.
And just kind of flicking through the other questions there, for the ones that I may have missed or not grouped together, there's a question just here in terms of curious to know if Ross has many female engineers, and also how the more mature employees adopted to the upskilling. Surely an exciting opportunity for all. I mean, I'm inspired by what I'm hearing, and I can imagine colleagues in the shop floor are excited by it as well.
Yeah, so female engineers, yes, we do. Not enough, I would say. We've made good strides towards that over the last few years. And to be honest, I think this sphere of technology is more, it's somebody used to this. Have they seen it before? Are they used to playing with Pokemon Go as the example? Are they comfortable with all the potential of the technology? So the question on the more mature employees adopting it, some don't like it, but I think that's more, for me, more based on what they do in their spare time. Are they naturally inclined to this kind of technology rather than any other demographic? And definitely we have people who are young and just don't want to touch it, and vice versa. So I think it's exciting, and on the whole, to the earlier question, Stephen, I think most people think it's exciting. Most people think it's cool. If nothing else, I'd like to get involved.
Just two other kind of questions I haven't covered before we do the kind of lessons learned type questions all as a group. What benefits and challenges did the faster ramp-up rate bring?
So we obviously, the aerospace industry's slowed down quite a bit in the last few years. I think our true ramp's still to come. The Kilkeel facility has grown or had grown rapidly over the years, and I think we haven't yet taken advantage of this technology with that ramp up. But typically it's going to be, how do we train new operators? How do we train operators in new products? And how do we do that in a way that gets them as fast as possible to the quality we need? And I think, again, this technology crosses a lot of those spheres. It helps people train them, understand the requirements, and helps them with the quality aspect, either by ensuring they understand what they have to do, or helping them with likely defects and what they need to check. So I think this is one of those things that, as we see everybody coming out of COVID-19, and we hope our industry and everybody recovers quickly and we all get to go on holidays again, this will help us prepare for that ramp when it comes.
And hopefully that ramp up comes quicker than sooner rather than later for not just your business but a lot of others as well. And automation may play a part in that ramp up. Have you any automation projects in the pipeline that you're considering, or maybe you've already begun investing in this period that it's a bit quieter?
Yeah, we're part of, there's the Collins Global groups have several automation projects in different spheres, and we're the Gilkeel organization's part of those. So it's definitely somewhere we need to go. For me, there's challenges with just the way our business works and the sheer volume of new customers and new products we have. And the traditional way of automating things is very either programming intensive or engineering time intensive. And for us, that balance of new parts to production run doesn't quite work for traditional automation. So we need something that's a little bit less overhead intensive for us.
And that's covered most of the questions, other than there's a kind of group of questions here around what you felt were the biggest challenges in terms of deployment, and what were the biggest lessons that you've learned as part of this process?
I think the biggest lesson was that we need somewhere safe to fail. I mean, and that applies to whether it's trying to deploy AGVs or a new digitization of your CAD onto the shop floor, this AR. It's that if we try to do it live in a production line or even a highly visible pilot area, it's just going to fail. We know it'll fail the first 3 or 4 times, and it gets people either assuming it'll never work and the tide of opinion goes against it, or the team get demoralized because they're failing in a very public way. So for me, the biggest lesson was to try and do this quietly somewhere where we can get it to a point where we want to show it. And if anybody uses manufacturing or technology readiness assessments as they're developing things, to the point that we've proven the concept, we think it will work, and now we want to take it out for people to start shooting holes in it and check it's perfect.
Ross, that's been absolutely fascinating, and congratulations to you and the team at Collins Aerospace for being brave enough to begin the journey first, but secondly, to actually deploy this in a way that is already demonstrating extraordinary results for the business. And I'm sure it's been quite a challenge for you all, but knowing now that this was a journey that was absolutely important and essential to take, but actually a journey that's delivering very positive outcomes, I think is a huge credit to you and all your colleagues. So thanks not just for your time today on this, but also for leading the way in many respects on some of these deployments. We know it's made a big difference to your business, and as a result, it makes a big difference to Northern Ireland as well. And we really appreciate that. Jordan, maybe if we just flag up our next few slides and a couple of questions. So I'll just finish off with saying that this was the fourth and our final of the current series of these step talks. And I don't know about you or whether you've dipped into one or had the benefit of myself taking a run through all 4 of them, but they've been very, very useful sessions, and I believe they've been very useful sessions, and hope you do as well. I mentioned there that the companies involved in the last 4 series, so that was Seagate, O'Neill's, Sam Aerospace, and indeed Collins Aerospace today, have offered to, not hundreds of people, but if people wanted a deeper dive, more technical information, then they're offering the opportunity to actually let you go and see and get involved with the companies who have hosted these sessions. So if you are interested in that kind of mentoring opportunity, or indeed if you're deploying some of these things in your own business and you'd like to offer the chance for people to be mentored as well, then it would be great if you drop an email to opexquery@investni.com, opexquery@investni.com. to ensure that your interest is registered. And then secondly, Ross mentioned it on the way through, but we've been encouraging manufacturing businesses to embark on that Industry 4.0 journey. And it actually begins with a really simple assessment, which is supported by InvestNI, which is the 4 manufacturing assessments. So I know that Collins have done it, all the other companies that have hosted these sessions have done it, and many other manufacturers have got involved in those assessments so far. And it's a great opportunity to take a snapshot about where you believe you are, particularly against your competitors or other people in similar industries, and to give you the opportunity to actually develop out a really simple strategic plan that can ensure that you either begin this journey or accelerate your pace in this journey as well. So again, if you're interested in that Industry 4.0 for manufacturing and assessment, do drop an email as well to opexquery@investni.com. Jordan, can we have the last 2 survey or poll questions, please? So the second last one, I'm going to keep this up for about 15 seconds. What challenge are you trying to solve that you believe requires a digital technology solution? Is it about production efficiency, innovation, issues with your supply chain, customer integration, or others? And I'll give that about 5 more seconds. And our last poll question, Jordan, please. Please select your top 2 areas which of the following you'd like to see these STEP webinars focus on. So hopefully you found the 4 that we've run so far useful, and we'd be keen to know whether you'd like others in other areas. So if you can pick one of the 5 categories there: securitization, predictive maintenance, mass customization, energy efficiency in the circular economy, or flexible manufacturing. And again, I'll give that about 5 more seconds. Thanks very much, Jordan. It just remains for me to say to you all, thanks for watching this and the other 3 STEP talks that we've hosted so far. Thanks to Seagate, to O'Neill's, Sam Aerospace, and to Ross and his colleagues at Collins Aerospace for today's session. I just want to also thank InvestNI and the team there who have put all these assessments on, or these seminars on. Jordan in the background, who's been keeping the technology flowing for us as well, and to Enterprise NI, who alongside ourselves and InvestNI have been hosting these events. Hopefully we'll see you again soon. Do take the opportunity to email and begin that manufacturing Industry 4.0 journey by taking part in the 4 manufacturing assessments. Thanks very much.